I never planned to spy on my neighbor. I'm not proud of what I did. But the night I watched his house, 3 women got to go home. I still hear their voices sometimes in that quiet hour before dawn. It makes my hands shake when I make coffee. It also reminds me why I stayed awake. My name is Martha Sullivan. I'm 60 years old and a widow. I have lived on Pine Meadow Drive for 40 years. I know the pattern of the streetlights. I know which sprinkler heads sputter and which ones pop. I know the sound the mail truck makes when it climbs the hill at noon. Most days are the same, and I liked it that way. My husband Jack passed 9 years ago. Heart. We had a nice life. He worked at the auto parts store off Maple. I did bookkeeping for a dentist until he retired. We raised a son who moved to Ohio and teaches math. Sundays used to be church phone call roast in the oven. After Jack died, the house felt too big, but the neighbors kept me steady. Bob next door brought casseroles. The Koenigs across the street shoveled my sidewalk. We waved, we swapped tomatoes and gossip. Our street was quiet and decent, the kind of place where kids rode scooters and fathers washed cars on Saturdays. The HOA sent silly letters about weeds and paint shades. We grumbled and sent our $35. Life went on. Then a moving truck came one hot afternoon and parked across from me. Men in gray shirts carried in boxes stamped with storage stickers. A tall steel fence panel leaned against the lawn like a warning sign. I stood at my window with a mug of tea and watched a man step out of a black pickup. He wore jeans and a hard jaw. He didn't look up at anyone. He didn't wave. He checked his phone, barked orders at the movers, and pointed to where the fence should go. That was my first look at Grant Decker. No one knew much about him. The real estate lady said, cash offer. He was maybe 50, strong shoulders, kept his hair in a tight buzz. He wore work boots and drove that big truck that took up half the curb. I told myself not to judge. People move for all sorts of reasons: divorce, jobs, a need to start over. Our street knew how to be welcoming. I baked a batch of chocolate cookies and carried them over on a paper plate with plastic wrap and a note that said, "Welcome to the block, Martha, across the way." He opened the door. He didn't smile. He took the plate like he was picking up a wrench. "Thanks," he said. "I'm across the street," I said, "if you need anything." "I'm fine," he said. "Busy." The door clicked. I stood there a moment longer, holding my empty hands. I told myself he might be tired. People who lift boxes all day get short. I walked home. I tried not to feel foolish. Almost at once, small things went wrong. He parked the truck right up against the strip of grass we share between driveways. It made backing out hard for me. I left a note on his windshield. "Please give a little more space." "Thanks, Martha." The next day, it was worse. He pulled in so his tailgate hung past the curb and into the sidewalk. He went inside. I rang the bell. He did not answer. The fence went up next. He tore out the old picket fence and installed tall metal panels, black, harsh. Not the sort of thing our HOA gets excited about. The rule book says front yard fencing must be harmonious with neighborhood design. I only know that because I chaired the rule book committee 15 years ago. The new fence cast a shadow onto the road at noon. It made the whole street feel smaller. Then came the lights. He added 2 LED floodlights under the eaves over his garage. They pointed at my house like I had done something wrong. They turned on at dusk and stayed on past midnight. The light poured into my bedroom, even through the blinds and curtains. I stood in the backyard and wanted to cry. It felt like the sun moved into his front yard and refused to set. I asked him, polite as I could, "Could you angle those down a little? They shine right into my window." "It's my property," he said. "I like to see." "You could use motion sensors," I said. Safer and saves electricity." He laughed through his nose. "I'll take care of my business. You take care of yours." He added a noise next, a fan or a vent. It hummed all day and night. Not loud enough to call the police, but steady. A long, low vibration that set the dog 2 doors over to whining. I learned to feel it in my ribs when I sat still. It followed me to bed and into the kitchen. I rang my son and told him about it. He said to talk to the HOA. I did. They sent a letter. A month passed. Nothing changed. He filed complaints of his own. I started getting HOA notes about my trash can being visible from the street and my hedge being 2 inches over the sidewalk. Our lawn guy cut it back even with a string level. 2 days later, the HOA took a photo and sent a warning. I felt like I lived in a fishbowl while someone tapped the glass for fun. One afternoon, I caught him leaning against his truck looking at my gutters. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" I said. He didn't move. "You got a downspout draining toward the common area," he said. "Bad for the foundation. Might ride it up." "It's been like that 40 years, I said. "Things change," he said. I shut the door and locked it even though it was daylight. My heart beat too fast. I leaned my forehead on the wood and told myself to breathe. The fan hummed. The lights came on at dusk. I started keeping notes like a schoolteacher. Date, time, what he did, where he parked, how long the lights stayed on, what the fan sounded like. Petty, maybe, but writing gave me a sense of control. It kept me from calling him names in my head. It put things in order. I thought if this goes to the HOA board, I'll be ready. If it goes to the city, I'll be ready. If he lies, I'll have the truth. People drifted away from him. Folks who tried to say hello got a grunt. A teen who cut across his lawn got yelled at. The mailbox cluster became a place where we whispered about him with sore mouths. He works nights, someone said. He sleeps at odd hours, someone else said. He's got permits for all of it, the HOA lady said with tired eyes. We shrugged and stepped around his shadow. I learned my house's dark spots. I learned where to stand in my living room, off to the side of the window, so I could see his driveway without being seen. I bought heavier curtains. I bought a sleep mask. I sometimes sat up past midnight in my robe, watching him come and go. He moved like a man who listened for footsteps. He carried heavy bags into the garage at odd hours. He visited the side of his house more than anyone I had ever seen, as if the wall mattered as much as the door. One night in late October, the fan stopped. I didn't notice at first because sound can hide in your bones. Then the silence hit me like a door closing. I stood in the hall. The silence was so clean it made my ears ring. I breathed in and smelled something like a hot motor and old water. I went to the kitchen window and cracked it open. The air was cold. Something like spoiled meat drifted in and vanished. I told myself, "Martha, shut the window. You're being dramatic." I shut it. I washed my hands. I made tea. That was the night I started to hear things. It was not every night. Sometimes a week would pass with nothing but the hum. Then there would be a thump or a long scrape, like a heavy box sliding on cement. The first time I heard it, I turned off the TV and stood very still. It came again softer. I went to the front window and peered through the edge where the curtain didn't quite reach. His garage door was closed. His floodlights were on. A moth banged itself silly against my glass. I waited and listened. My heart beat in my neck. No more sound came. I told myself it was the water heater. In November, I woke at 2:30 from a bad dream where the house leaned. I sat up in the warm dark. The lights from across the street bounced off my ceiling. I decided to make toast. Toast always helps. I walked through the living room and stopped. I thought I had heard crying. I stood still with my hand on the back of the couch. The crying was not loud, and it was not clear, soft as if swallowed, a tremble in the air, like someone trying not to be heard. I waited. It did not repeat. I made toast. I ate it at the sink while looking across the street. I decided it was a cat. The next day I called Barb. "You ever hear anything over there?" I said. "Like what?" "I don't know. A voice. Something." "I keep my TV loud," she said. "My hearing isn't what it was." I called the HOA and left a message about the lights again. I told myself not to be a busybody. Busybody is what people say about women my age when we notice things. He added a lock to a side door in January, a heavy hasp and a padlock, the kind you bolt through with carriage bolts. He installed it with care, slow the way men do when they like the feel of the tool in their hand. I watched from the hallway and felt a deep cold settle in my hips. I knew that door. It was the side door to his basement. Maybe he keeps tools down there. I told myself out loud to hear a normal voice. Maybe he worries about theft. Snow came. The street got quiet and clean. The kids built a lopsided snowman. Valentine decorations went up on doors. His house stayed bare. One night, after a hard freeze, his truck left at 1 in the morning. I watched the taillights disappear over the hill. A few minutes later, the fan turned off by itself with a click. The silence felt like God holding his breath. Then I heard it. It was not a cry, not at first. More like a scrape with a pause, then a smaller scrape. I walked to the front door and put my ear close. The cold came through the crack around the frame. I held my breath. There, under the floor of it all, a hoarse whisper. It could have been wind in a vent. It could have been mice. But then I heard a word rise through the wood like a bubble. "Help." I stood with my hand on the knob. I am 60. I am not a hero. I have trouble with jars sometimes. I thought of all the nights I had complained about his lights. I thought of all the notes and the measuring tapes. I thought, Martha, if you are wrong, you will be the crazy lady on Pine Meadow Drive. If you are right, someone is in a place they should never be. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? I don't know if it's an emergency, I said, but something is wrong across the street. What is the address? I gave it. What do you observe? I hear something, I said. From the house, from the basement. I have noticed locks, lights, a fan that runs all the time. I smell something sometimes when the garage opens. I have notes. The fan is off right now. I can hear a voice. I think it is a person. The operator asked me to repeat myself. My voice shook. I apologized for being old. She said, "Ma'am, please stay on the line and stay inside your house. Officers are on the way." My legs went weak with relief that I had not imagined it. Then fear came in like a draft and set my shoulders stiff. I turned out my front light. I stood behind my curtain and watched the street. I prayed he would not come home. The first patrol car crept up without lights, then another. They parked down the block and walked in the cold. I waved from my window to show them the house. I called the operator back and said, "He is not home." My breath made fog on the glass. The officers knocked. They went around the side with flashlights. One of them leaned down near the concrete and put his ear to the vent. I saw him flinch and look at the other man. He spoke into his shoulder mic. In a minute, the street was full of blue and red. The quiet woke like a drum. Doors opened. Robes shuffled. People came out onto porches. Barb stood at her railing with a blanket around her. "What's going on?" she called over. I don't know, I lied, although I knew enough. They cut the lock off the side door. I heard the metal scream in the cold. They pulled the door open. A smell crept out after and crossed the street and found my nose through the crack at the window. It was sour and rank and sad. It was a place that had not seen the sun. The officers shouted. Others ran with gear. A woman officer came and put her hand on the doorframe like a person bracing for pain. She went down the steps. Her voice came up steady, but quick. Another officer followed with a light. I wanted to run across. I am not the sort to stand still when someone is in trouble. But the operator had said to stay inside, and I listened when people in uniforms gave instructions. I stood shaking and watched my breath cloud the glass. The first woman came up backward, speaking softly. Behind her, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs, a woman with hair stuck to her face. She wore an oversized t-shirt and nothing on her feet. She blinked slow, like she didn't trust the light. Another woman came after, and then a third, each one smaller than I thought a grown woman could be. The officers wrapped them in blankets and led them to the ambulance. The neighbors at the corner started crying. Barb put her hand on her mouth. I leaned my forehead on the cold window and said, "Thank you," out loud to the empty room. Grant turned onto the street just then. His truck slowed when he saw the lights. He pulled up like a man arriving at work. An officer stepped into the road with his hand out. The truck stopped. You could feel the moment the story he told himself broke. He looked at the open side door. He looked at the people on the lawn. He looked at the neighbor with a phone who lifted it to film. He looked at me. I didn't mean to be visible. I thought the dark had my back, but he saw me. He raised his chin. I saw the part of him that had parked too close on purpose. I saw the part of him that had aimed the lights into my bedroom because he could. His face changed. He lifted his hand from the wheel as if to adjust something that would make this normal. An officer told him to turn off the engine and step out. He did slow. They talked. They put his hands behind his back. The street went so quiet you could hear the zip of the cuffs sliding. They walked him to the curb. A kid across the street asked his mother too loud, "Is the bad man going to jail?" His mother said, "Hush," and held him tight. The cameras on phones stayed up. We don't miss much on Pine Meadow. They led Grant to the car. He didn't look at me again. I watched him pass under his own lights. It made his face white and flat. The door shut. The car moved away. The lights washed the houses and the snow and my old mailbox, and then they took the noise down the hill and out of sight. I did not sleep that night. The fan did not start again. I sat at the kitchen table and kept my hands busy folding dish towels, sorting coupons I would never use. Dawn came slow in winter gray. I made coffee. The phone rang early. It was the police. They asked me to come down and make a statement. I put on my heavy sweater and my coat and my church shoes because they are the only ones without a crack in the sole. I brushed my hair. I looked older than I was in the mirror. At the station, a detective with tired eyes took my notes and read them. He asked me to tell him the whole story slow from the beginning. I did. He did not make me feel foolish. He asked questions that made me feel smart. When I got to the part about hearing the word through the floor, I cried. He slid a box of tissues across and let me cry. He nodded. "You did the right thing," he said. "You absolutely did." I stopped by church on the way home and lit a candle. I don't know what I believe about candles, but the act of lighting felt like putting a hand on someone's back. I said the names of no one because I didn't know them yet. I said the first one, and the second one, and the third one, and I asked for their mothers to know they were still here. News vans came that afternoon. They parked on the corner and tried not to block the mail truck. The HOA president wore a scarf and talked to a camera about rules and safety and community watch. I stayed inside and pulled the curtains. I did not want to be on TV. I made soup and took a bowl to Barb. We sat at her table and watched the screen. A reporter stood under the street sign and said our block's name. It was strange to see Pine Meadow drive in the crawl at the bottom of the local news. It felt like someone had taken our quiet and hung it up so the whole city could point at it. The women's names stayed off the news, thank God. The reporter said rescued and alleged and ongoing investigation. The camera showed a close-up of the cut padlock where it lay on the dirt like a dead beetle. I turned away. Days after, the house across the street sat with its door sealed by a piece of paper that said, "Do not enter." The fan stayed off. The lights stayed off. The street returned to its normal traffic noises and dog barks and grocery deliveries. It took my body longer to quiet. I jumped at sounds. I woke before dawn and listened for nothing. I wanted to sleep but didn't trust it. I kept the living room lamp on and told myself it was for reading. A police car pulled up on the third day. A woman officer I had seen at the house stepped out and came to my door. I opened it and felt peace at the sight of her. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said. "Yes. I'm Officer Reyes. I wanted to let you know the women are stable. They're with medical staff and advocates. They're safe." Her voice was gentle. "They asked us to say thank you. We won't be sharing their names, but they know a neighbor called. That matters." I put my hand to my chest and said, "Thank you for telling me." She looked at the notes in my file, the neat handwriting. "You kept good records," she said. "You were patient. That helped." I nodded. I didn't know what to do with praise. I wanted to put it away in a drawer with the good tablecloth. "Do you need anything?" she asked. "I need to sleep," I said, and we both smiled like women who have had long nights. She left. I shut the door and leaned against it and listened to the sound of my own house. The refrigerator hummed. The heater clicked. Somewhere a pipe ticked as it cooled. Safe noises. The neighbors brought me pies. The HOA sent a letter, not about a hedge, but about gratitude for vigilance and a reminder to report lights angled into bedrooms if needed. People waved from their cars. I am not a person who enjoys attention, but I tried to receive it with grace. "You did good," Martha Barb said, patting my hand. "You kept your eyes open. You did what was right." Weeks passed. The truck disappeared for good. A real estate sign went up. It was strange to see a nice photo on a brochure for a house that had been so wrong. 3 bedrooms, finished basement, it said. I wanted to take a pen and cross out finished and write cleansed, but I did not. Sometimes late, I walk to my front window and stand behind the curtain out of habit. I look at the spot where he used to park. I look at the side door with the new wood patched in. I breathe slow and steady and tell my bones they can rest. If I tell the truth, hatred woke me up. Hatred kept me at the window when I wanted to go to bed. Hatred made me write down petty things. I do not like that part of the story, but it is part of the truth. Hatred channeled became watchfulness. Watchfulness that night became action. Action saved lives. I think about that when I do dishes or sort mail. We do not always get to choose what wakes us. We do get to choose what we do once we're awake. I called my son and told him the rest of the story. He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." I told him that pride is a sharp word and a soft word, and both fit. He laughed and asked me if I had eaten lunch. We are who we are. When I pass the police station now, I sometimes drop off a pan of brownies. I don't write a note. I don't need anyone to know my name. I just put the pan on the bench and go home. I sleep better these days. The house is still big, but it holds me the way it used to. In the morning, I look out at the street and see kids on scooters and fathers washing cars. I turn the page on the calendar, sweep the porch, and wave at Barb watering her geraniums. If you had asked me a year ago if I would ever press my ear to a door and hear a word rise up from a basement, I would have said you watch too many crime shows. But life, even on a quiet block, is stranger than shows. Real life asks for small, brave acts at odd hours from ordinary people who are just trying to sleep. If you find yourself in a bright light you did not ask for, if a noise will not stop, if something feels wrong and will not leave your chest, write it down. Keep notes. Pay attention. Call when the call is needed. You might be the only one awake. I never planned to spy on my neighbor. I still don't like the word. But I also don't mind the look on the children's faces when they ride past and wave to me on my porch. They wave like the porch light means something. Maybe it does. Maybe it always has. And if you believe that a small act of awareness can make a difference, share this story with someone you love. Tell them to trust their ears. Tell them to look out their window once in a while. Tell them to be kind, but not blind. It might save a life. It might save more than one.